Hello and welcome to Filmi Ladies. Today we're going to talk about this recently released movie on Netflix that everyone on social media cannot stop talking about. It is written and directed by Zoya Akhtar. It's also written by Rima Kagdi. It has dialogues by Farhan Akhtar. It has lyrics, I think, by Javed Akhtar. So the Akhtars definitely have their stamp all over it. And it stars a lot of big names, but they're big for no reason. And this movie, in case you don't know, is called The Nepos. Okay, no, they're not called the Nepos. That's just what I call it. It's called the Archies. Um, and apparently, me and Beth are in the category of haters now because we were not impressed by it. So I guess that makes us haters and trolls because how dare we not appreciate the great artistic vision of Zoya Akhtar? I have so many things to say about it. So I'm just going to let Beth start. Beth, um, I know that neither you nor I were super excited about watching either Pathan or Jawan, but then when we saw it, we were like, okay, it wasn't too bad. We're not the
Mhm,
biggest fans. We're not going to rewatch, but it wasn't too bad.
mhm.
So we were like a little bit pleasantly surprised, and we have mixed feelings about the donkey trailers as well. What did you have a preconceived notion before watching the Archies, and did the actual like, how did you feel afterwards? Did it live up or did it not? Like, what grade would you give it?
Ugh. I guess I'd give it about a B minus, something like that.
Hmm.
Um, I, I also grew up knowing the Archies comics, although in a very different setting than the Indian, love of them. By the time I was about, I think 8 or 9, was like, this is 50s throwback nonsense, Happy Days. The TV show set in the 50s was much more enjoyable to me than the Archies.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I've never watched Riverdale, which is funny because I like a ridiculous teen drama, but I think it's really interesting to why take this thing and transport it to a completely different time and place and then not, as far as I could discern, really do a whole lot with it that couldn't have been done maybe just by creating another thing. Like, is the fact that it's called the Archies just a marketing thing? I don't, so which it didn't even need because of the cast and the some of the crew. So I I have no affection for the original source material, but I also don't really understand why it was used in this way. I don't care. I don't mind. I just don't get it. I thought it looked beautiful. I really liked some of the music, the costumes, the set, all of that was really lovely. Um, I loved the song on roller skates because everything is better on roller skates. um, I don't have a ton else to say. I found the Star Kids okay, not
Yeah.
great. I think it was to their benefit that they were in such a stylized thing because some of what was going on that I found a little weird about them, I think could be chalked up to the sort of artistic vision. Maybe not, but maybe I wasn't wowed by any of them, nor was I disgusted by any of them. I just was like, ugh, these are youngins doing their first their first big thing. And I will just note here that upon reading the cast list later, I noticed that there is a Nepo baby for specifically for someone like me, which is Tom Alter's son is in this movie.
Jamie Alter.
Jamie, who
Yeah.
I know he's a cricket person. I'd never seen him before, but I was like, oh, Mr. Gomes, he was fun. And then I was like, oh, so I don't know. That might almost be all I have to say about the Archies.
Oh, this movie. Well,
Go for it.
I'll start with the good things because there are very few good things, so I might as well get those out of the way. I very much enjoyed the set design, and I we looked up on IMDb before recording because I wanted to give a shout out to whoever did the set design and art direction because it was so stunning. But the
Mm.
list was so long, we were like, we cannot get through this. The costumes were also amazing. There were so many dresses that Suhana Khan wore that I wanted, like especially that
Mhm.
brocade dress at the fest, and then I loved Kushi Kapoor's like pants, like the really high waisted ones when she's on the bicycle. It was so
Yeah.
cute. Like the
Yeah.
outfits were lovely. The
Yeah.
chiffon and Georgia saris the women were lovely. So I really liked the costume design, the makeup, the art direction. All of that was great. But that I wasn't particularly impressed by the songs. I mean, this is a particularly weak soundtrack for Shankar Hassan Loy, whom I expect so many great things
Mm.
of. So I did not like the songs. However, I really loved the voice of the singer who voiced Betty. Like every time Kushi Kapoor would go into some sort of reverie, that voice would come on. And I had the hardest time trying to find out who that singer is. So if someone knows, please tell us. IMDb did not tell us, Google did not tell us, but beautiful
Yeah.
voice. I loved
She's
it.
the best musical part for sure for me.
Yeah, really lovely.
Yeah.
Um, the only acting performance I really liked was Hiram Lodge, who was played by Ali
Yeah.
Khan. I thought he was
He was
amazing.
good. The adults are
He was
great.
The adults were great. I
Yeah.
liked Koil Puri, shockingly, which I
Yeah.
never liked Koil Puri, but I liked her. Like that role seems so tailor made for her because she just comes across as so snobbish and annoying in real life. Um, I liked, Tara Sharma was really cute in her role as well. I liked the adults a lot. Um,
And Sweetu was
I
there.
know Sweetu was there. She was so adorable. I was like, wait,
Pam
that's
ma'am.
Sweetu. Yeah,
Hello, Pam
Pam,
ma'am.
ma'am. But I also like the other lady, the ones who owned the cuts and curls or whatever it was called. Like she
Mhm.
was so mean to poor Ethel.
Mhm.
So I like the acting of the adults, and I like these things. My This movie frustrated me for two very big reasons, which is my biggest pet peeve with Bollywood these days is the over emphasis on style rather
Mm.
than substance, which was my complaint with Kala as well, and this is my complaint with so many films. The
But Pitu,
writing,
they saved a park.
whatever.
And I'm very pro park, don't get me wrong,
I
but
I am. I'm like a hiker. I love parks, and even I didn't give a damn anymore. Like that's how little I cared.
I think my problem with that was that, I mean, the at least again, I'm maybe showing my American context bias. It's a joke when you say that a film is like the plot is let's put on a talent show to save the rec center, like it's an
Yeah.
80s movie. Um, and so I think the mistake in that for me was how the kids kept talking about how it was their history, and I just kept thinking, "You are 17." And I'm glad that a 17-year-old has appreciation of their history, like, but there was something kind of missing, and maybe it's a subtitle thing, in the sort of why they cared about that, and I know there's the analogy of, like, planting a tree in your roots and da 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 da, but, like, I just thought that needed a little bit more enrichment somehow.
But that's what I mean, like, that's where I think that the writing was so poor. Like, the
Mm.
writing was so poor, I didn't care about anyone or anything. I mean, I cared about the park because I, in general, just care about parks. I also, in general, care about bookshops. But the idea that that bookshop was gonna be shut down, Mr. Cooper's bookshop, and, like, I was like, okay. Like, it was so meh. Whereas if you watch The Shop Around the Corner, that movie, you
Mhm.
really care about the bookstore, or you really care about the bookstore and You've Got Mail, which is a remake of The Shop
Right.
Around the Corner. The writing in this was so poor, and that's what was so disappointing is that Zoya Akhtar and Reema Kakdi, that team is associated with brilliant writing.
Mm.
This is the team, well, at least I know Zoya Akhtar gave us Luck by Chance, which was her debut movie.
Yeah.
And the writing in that was so sharp. And then, Gully Boy, Dil Dharakne Do, like writing has always been their strong point. And the writing is this was just so flat. Like, I genuinely do not think that even with better actors, I don't think that this movie could have been good because the writing just didn't hold up. The other reason it failed for me was because when you watch a movie or when you read a book or when you look at a piece of art or you listen to a piece of music, you need to care one way
Mm.
or the other. You can love, you can hate, but you shouldn't
Mm.
be bored, like if you watch Kabir Singh and you absolutely despise Kabir Singh, like that's an emotion. Or if you watch something and you absolutely love them, that's an emotion. I didn't care about anyone. I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Archie's is two-timing Betty and Ronnie's sad and she like whatever, Betty's sad. I couldn't care less. I was like, whatever, I'm not interested. And I know it's completely unfair to compare these people to like young Shahrukh because that's just so wrong. But I can't fail to remember just sort of that lovelorn guy that Shah Rukh used to play back in the day, like in Kabhi Haan Kabhi Na, like just those close-ups of his where he would look at Suchitra Krishnamurti in that movie, or like in Ana Mere Pyar Ko Na Tum, whatever, Samjho Jana, and just like his that heart eye emoji that he would do, where he would just, it was just emanating from him, the desire for her to just look at him. You really felt for that character. I
Mm.
was like, I don't even know if Anna is the right person for him, but like I want him to have a chance. I just couldn't care less about anyone, like whatevs. So it failed on that count because I was just completely not interested or invested. And
Mm.
thirdly, it failed my cell phone test within 10 minutes of the movie
Oh,
starting.
that's interesting. It did pass my cell phone test, but I was
It
also
did.
I've had a very long work week this week, and so I think I mean, I started this at something like I came home, I made some toast, and I started watching this, like, I started it at 5:30 in the evening. So I was headed for an early bed, so I just kind of and I was tired, I was lying on my side on the couch watching it
Right.
sideways and everything, so yeah, it did hold my attention, partly for the visuals more than
Hmm.
the plot.
Well, that's
I
the
did
thing. If I want to watch a movie that has gorgeous visuals and actually has a story and has great acting and direction, I'll just watch a Wes Anderson film. Why should I make do with this
right.
drivel? I'll just rewatch the Darjeeling Limited.
So, speaking of Wes Anderson, how did you feel that this concept of Riverdale and the little backstory they gave it, like, how did that work as an imagined space or a space for sort of projecting different identities and all that kind of stuff? And also, how did the sort of I shouldn't say sort of relentless, something is either relentless or it's not, the relentless quirkiness of some aspects of this, or tweeness maybe is a better word,
It was very
which
twee.
was sort of couched in some historic stuff. And so I you know, but yeah, how did that work for you? How did the setup
It
work?
felt very shallow. I
Mm,
don't have a problem at all with things that are quirky. I love quirky. I'm wearing the gummy bear earrings you gave me, so I am no stranger to quirkiness. Again, I love Wes Anderson, and maybe that's
mhm.
not. I mean, I feel like that's a fair comparison because Wes Anderson is a big name, but so is Zoya Akhtar.
Yep,
So
yep.
and it's again, it's fine to be quirky. It's fine to do like really cool stuff. It's fine to like focus on the stylized stuff. But again, the story needs to be there. There needs to be some meat. There needs to be some context. I just, it just felt very like, it felt like this half-baked idea that someone came up with when they were drunk and they wrote it on a cocktail napkin.
Yeah.
And they were like, wouldn't it be fun if we set it in 1960s in a little hill station? It's all these cute Anglo-Indian people and they're eating pudding and they're saying things like sing for your supper. Ideally, you wake up the next morning, you're hungover, and you realize you're too old to get that drunk, and then you tear up that napkin and throw it away. Or you develop the idea. So
Yeah,
it felt very shallow and very
yeah.
superficial. It was quirky and pretty for the sake of being quirky and pretty, and
Mm,
that just never, it never stays.
mm,
There's no staying power in it. So I was just
mm.
kind of like, eh. Um, do you want to get to the acting?
Let me say one more thing about
Okay.
story that I did actually like.
Mm,
Archie was super annoying to me,
yes.
and I was very glad that the film agreed that he was kind of a not a loser, but someone who needed to get some substance behind him, and that they had two instances of people singing at him to get his shiz together. And I feel like you don't see that super often. And I liked
Yeah.
that, especially for a privileged teenage boy, and I obviously it's a point that he is not the same social class as Veronica, and that's important. And her father, quite cruelly, reminds him of that. And I like that Archie kind of lets that roll off of him, but then the actual critiques of substance directed at him, he does sort of at least partially take on board, and like, you dumb dumb, politics shapes everything, or you can't treat these two young women who are your friends especially this way. And you can't put your friend, was it Jughead who was the one he had confided to, and then the girls that got out of him what was
Uh, or maybe it was Dilton. No, it wasn't Dilton. I
wasn't
think maybe it
Delton.
was Jughead.
Oh, whatever. Whichever of the other who weren't the main three, because none of those people really mattered very much. I was sad
Yeah.
about that. I wanted them to have a little more to do because they were more fun.
Hmm.
And I thought they were handled okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But I wanted more from them. Um, so I did enjoy that.
Yeah. And while you were saying that, I was thinking because you said, one doesn't see that very often, and you're very right. No one ever is. People are very rarely called out on their privilege in Hindi cinema, and the only two examples I can think of where it has happened is Ranbir Kapoor in Wake Up Said,
Mm,
where that girl, basically says to him, whatever. And then Farhan Akhtar's character in Luck by Chance,
yeah.
where Konkona Sen calls him out on his crap. I mean, those are just two examples I can think of, and one of those happens to be also, isn't there a scene in Gully Boy where
I
Ranveer
was
Singh or
thinking about
someone
that. I've only
talks
seen
to
it the one
Kalki
time,
about
but
it?
I bet
Yeah.
I bet there is, yeah.
So
So
it's
the
interesting.
Akhtars are aware to a certain extent of this, um, and the fact that it was in song made it even more enjoyable to me somehow. Like, have a whole
Yeah.
song about "you ding dong, politics matters."
Yeah.
And that's important, especially now. I liked there was a little moment where Ethel says, "I won't apologize for being ambitious." I like,
Mm,
but she also decides where to put her ambition in a way that is more meaningful to her, which is a
yeah.
wonderful thing to know about yourself at only 17. And hopefully she can take it forward into her own small business or whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
So there was, and I did really like, so my memory of the Archies is that I'm very pro Betty. I identify
Mm.
with Betty. And Ronnie can jump in a lake. But they did make her a little more complicated than that, and I appreciated that as well. I have no idea if that's in. I mean, the source material is 80 years old at this point, so probably that's
Right.
been covered somewhere. But I liked that they let the rich, and it wasn't just a gilded cage. They actually did kind of something different with rich girl actually has a heart as well. I liked that
Mhm.
the female friendship stayed intact. That was really nice. Um, so yeah, there were. I didn't hate it, but I was sort of disappointed would imply that I had a lot of hopes for it, and I didn't
Mm.
really. I was sort of neutral or ambivalent going in, and I remain as such. I kept thinking about whether it would have made a better like 6 to 8 part series rather than a movie.
Yeah.
Could have done a little more with a few
They
more
could have
things.
fleshed stuff out more probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this was
But
short even by Hindi movie standards. I mean, I know it's Netflix or whatever, but, like, even by that standard, it was short. Like, maybe they could have taken out 1 or 2 songs or shortened them and, like, there just wasn't much, like I didn't learn anything about any of the characters really.
excuse me, what you learned is that everyone in this town quite rightly loves cake.
Yes!
And just so everyone
I
knows,
am behind that.
there's an upcoming episode of this very podcast that is going to talk about cakes in Indian cinema. And this is the cakest movie I have ever seen from India. There are cakes everywhere, even a baking sequence. So like again, salute the kind of set and prop styling and the use of, and I think as we discuss in that podcast that you all will hear next week, the Anglo-Indian traditions being important to the significance of baked goods of various kinds. So
Yeah.
like I was like, oh, no, Zoya was listening to our podcast that hadn't happened yet. So
It
maybe
was
she
like a
reads,
telepathic
maybe
beam.
she knows about the Tumblr and the Instagram. But um
Right?
so yeah, that again, that just like the details of the visuals and the kind of what people were up to, and like all of Dalton,
Dilton.
all of his radio equipment, and obviously they use it, but then also it was kind of there all along, and I thought they handled that pretty well. Like they didn't
Mhm.
hang a huge bow on it, but it was like a nice little exchange, and there was an actual grown-up conversation among people who are not grown-ups, which is hard to do, and then they kind of move along. So
Yeah.
yeah, anyway,
I
the
think
acting.
2 things I liked. One, I liked when Betty and Veronica are kind of like chatting with each other, and Ronnie basically says to Betty that everyone loves you and blah blah blah, and then she kind of disses Archie. Like I like that
Yeah,
where your self esteem wasn't being hinged on a guy. Well, I mean, actually it was because Betty's self esteem was hinged on Archie
yeah,
appreciating her, but Ronnie kind of giving her a little bit of a reality check. And I loved that line by Koel Puri, which I think that's going to be such a good meme. I hope Sujoy is on it and making like some sort of good gif. But it was the part where she says to Betty, like, when you're thinking about these boys or whatever, that's when like common sense flies out of
oh
your
yeah.
head. I love that bit as well. So those things I liked. But I also found it a little bit confusing. Like, I know these are 17-year-olds, but it was weird because on the one hand, the message sort of seemed to be that, why are you obsessing constantly about this one boy who, by the way, is such a player and doesn't particularly care about either of you, and you're just gonna get your heart hurt. But then on the other hand, it was all about that though. So I
Yeah.
kind of like, I'm like, but you're telling me that they should care about Archie, but then you're also telling me that they shouldn't. But then also they're 17 years old. I was just like, okay, it was
It
weird.
it certainly was a speedy and amicable resolution to that
Mm,
tension, which I feel like is not the typical way of dramatic high school students, but um,
yeah.
yeah, that didn't bother me, but I see what you're saying. I like that they sort of dispensed of some of that, and that the focus of Archie was him learning about himself rather than him bestowing upon one of the young women his favors, like
Right.
they can
Like,
both
you may
move on
kiss
with
the
their
ring.
lives.
Yeah.
And it's in this town of, what was it, 8,500 people or something, a very
Right.
small town that, not a whole lot of dating options probably. So hopefully
Right.
they go away
Right.
to school, go away to university, and something
I would
something
gladly, I
exciting will
would
happen.
gladly date Vedang Rana though. Like, boy was
Yeah.
fine. Boy was
Yeah.
very fine. He actually reminded me so much of Ranveer Singh. Like, he
Yeah,
looked,
same.
right? He looked
Yeah.
exactly like Ranveer
Yeah.
Singh in Lutera,
Yeah.
especially. Like,
Yeah.
with the slicked back hair and everything. And I was like, oh my God. Like, if they ever have a movie where Ranveer Singh, there needs to be like a younger one, like Ranveer Singh in high school, they have to
Hmm.
cast him. I
Yeah.
thought he was so suave and smooth, and I loved his
Hmm.
sarcasm, and he really
Hmm.
brought it. Like, he had screen presence. Every
Hmm.
time Vedang Rana was on screen, I was like, yeah, you got it. And I was like, why do I have to see Agastya's sad old face again? Ugh. So yeah. Okay,
So
the
talk
acting.
about him. Talk about him.
I thought that Agastya Nanda had the personality and the charisma of a wet mop. Or a biscuit. I remember during
Hmm.
one of our episodes, I called Karan Deol a biscuit, and I said it's not even a nice one, like not even like a bourbon biscuit, more
No.
like a Marie biscuit, or like
Yeah.
something very dry, or like
Yeah.
hardtack or something. So Agastya Nanda would be a biscuit, but it would not be a biscuit I would want to dunk in my tea. The biscuit
No.
I would want to dunk into my tea would be Vedang Rana.
Mm.
Um, he was just very boring, and I didn't understand why people were attracted to him, because I was like, well, what's he got? He has zero expressions on his face when he's trying to be like, not seductive, that's not the right word, but when he's like courting, when he's
Hmm.
courting Betty, like when they go to that fancy ass restaurant or whatever, he was so dull. He was so low energy. I was like, I have more energy at 10:30 p.m. at night when I'm getting ready to go to bed. Like, I have to settle myself down. And he was just like sleepwalking. That is also how I felt about Suhana. That is also how I felt about Kushi. Everybody was very low energy. And I don't understand. I can kind of understand if Betty is portrayed as being low energy, although it doesn't really make sense, because Betty in the Archies comics she's very perky,
Hmm.
and she's
Hmm.
very pert, and she's very one of those like 50s girls in poodle skirts and like the
Yeah.
swingy high pony. Like,
Yeah.
she's supposed to be like this bubbly cute. Like, I can imagine young Preeti Zinta in that role. Young Preeti Zinta would
Hmm.
have killed it in that role. She was the definition of Betty. But
Hmm.
the Ronnie character, girl is supposed to have sass, she's supposed to have spunk, she's supposed to be a little bit like bitchy, and she has to have this like chip on her shoulder, like, I'm all that because my last name is Lodge. Where was the spunk? Where was the sass? Sohana was so dull. And what was with speaking in such a low register? Like, half the time I had to like really strain to hear what she had to say. I put the
Huh.
subtitles on because I couldn't understand her
Huh.
mumbling. Speaking of mumbling, I guess they also mumbles a lot.
Mm.
Um, and I was like, why would you cast someone with such a lackluster presence as Ronnie? Because really, it's Ronnie's casting that is so important, because you need someone with yutzpah, and someone who's like sassy. And I was thinking of who would be great, and Pooh, of course, Pooh comes to mind. Bebo in K3G, with the lining up the men and like rating them and being like, have a fun time.
So can I read you a tweet that I saw that
Yes.
actually makes this very connection? So just a warning, this is going to get into a political realm that I don't remotely understand, but there was other content in the tweet that I did think was interesting. So I'm just going to read this out and know that I'm not necessarily saying I agree with all this, because I don't really understand it well enough to say. So this is from a user named Buffalo Intellectual. And it says, the Archies will be rediscovered a few years later as a cult film and ahead of its time because it shows elite Savarnas exactly as they want to be seen. Problem right now is it is still considered a little taboo to fully embrace vapid, inane, shallow aesthetic. When Gen Z grows up, this vapidity will become their nostalgia, like inexplicably Pooh from K3G was for millennial Savarnas. I thought that was really interesting, and I'm putting aside Savarna because I don't have the knowledge
Right.
to really get into that. But I do think the sort of heroizing the vapid elite
Hmm.
is a really good point, and I hadn't quite put my finger on that when I was watching, but I do think some of that's going on. is this film more guilty of that than the average mainstream Hindi film that deals with rich people? I would need to think about that if I think this one's actually
Me
any
too.
worse. What it is worse at than the average film is that the real life elite who are in this film, right? So it kind of doubles down on its elitism. And I don't know if any of these young people are vapid. I don't pay attention to their Instagram and whatever, but obviously we are besieged by media that are not easily conducive to depth. It's perfectly possible, but the current in most of the social media is to be kind of thoughtlessly image driven or image driven about things that don't matter. Shouldn't say there's not
I
thought.
mean, it's the
It's
era of
strategic. It's
TikTok.
not right. It's strategic, but it's not necessarily content in
Mm.
some ways. So I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, but there's also vapid, shallow, annoying people that never became a cult thing, like Pooh
Absolutely.
did. But then
Absolutely.
there's also Sonam Kapoor and Aisha, or actually Sonam Kapoor in any of her stupid roles that
Right.
she's done,
Right.
where it's the same thing. And I don't hear people referencing Sonam Kapoor and Aisha strolling through DLF Mall with her Gucci and her Chanel. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I am nostalgic about Pooh because that was Bebo. Like Bebo was stunning in that. Do I want to be friends with Pooh? Absolutely not. But
Right.
she was iconic in a way that, say, Sonam Kapoor in those same vapid roles was not. I don't want to be friends with that Sonam Kapoor either, but
Mm,
she's also not memorable to me.
mm,
So I don't know if I 100% agree with that tweet because it's almost implying that it's basically talking about the vapidity and saying that people are, but it's taking away how good that actress in question was. Like, for
mm.
example, I still have a lot of love for Clueless. I love Clueless, but
Right.
that's because
Right.
it was
Right.
Alicia Silverstone.
Yeah.
How can you ignore the role of Cher in that
Yeah.
movie? Like, she was
And
amazing.
all of these people become less vapid over the course of their
Yes, they
films, but
develop some depth at
some
least.
scripts do that better, some actors do that better,
Mm,
some entire projects do that better.
yeah.
And then some just stick in the brain better. Like for me, one of the things that remains about Clueless is how quotable it is. Now, obviously, the
Yes.
language barrier for me is going
She's
to
a
mean that,
Monet. I still
yeah,
say that.
yeah, yeah. I totally paused,
Yeah.
So I think that's, that can be a factor. Does Archies have quotable lines? I'm the wrong
No.
person to ask, but you as a Hindi speaker are saying
No.
no, not really.
There
Yeah.
was there was just that one about Koel Puri, and I've already forgotten it to the point where I cannot
Yeah.
accurately quote it anymore. Where she said the thing leaving your head.
Yeah.
Everything else was just there was also a lot of stuff in it that like made me go, huh? You know,
Uh,
like I understand that these are Anglo Indians, and I understand that it's like the Erites and or whatever. But like even stuff like singing for your supper, who says that? Who in India says that? I don't care if you're Anglo Indian. Like what? So there was a lot of stuff that just made me go, huh? And I remember Farhan Akhtar used to trip me up in the early days, like
mm,
when he did Lal Chata and stuff. Especially with Farhan Akhtar, you can tell that this man completely thinks and dreams in English because many of his dialogues are exact translations of English in a way that doesn't quite land and in a way that
mm,
doesn't make sense. Like just because you translate it
right.
literally into Hindi, it doesn't make sense. I can't give you an example right now, but there's many dialogues in Dil Chahta Hai that made me go, what? You know, like an example would be, and this is not from Dil Chahta, I'm just making it up, but it's kind of like, how in English we say, I was just in the zone. Like I was just in the zone. There's no way to accurately translate that into Hindi in a way that makes sense. Like
Mm,
you can Google whatever the Hindi word for zone is, but it wouldn't be like, what would you say? It just doesn't land. So there was a lot of things in the dialogue that also made me go, what? But it wasn't quotable at all either. I didn't find it quotable. I didn't care. Gully Boy is so quotable. Luck by
mm,
Chance is quotable. So many scenes in those movies made sense. Even a movie like Honeymoon Travels Private Limited, which is not like I don't love it as much as I love Zoe Akhtar's other films, but that's quotable. Dil Dharakne Do, so quotable. Like, remember that scene where Zarina Wahab is like throwing her usual emotional tantrum and she's like, I'm going to cut my vein or whatever. And Ranveer Singh is like, Auntie, wo
butter
butter
knife.
knife hai. Yeah. Like, that's so memorable, right?
Yeah.
There was nothing memorable in this movie.
Mm.
So, And
Meh.
then Kushi Kapoor, I was just like, can you not? Like, she was so robotic. That's the thing. Everyone was very
Mm,
robotic. Their dialogue delivery was terrible. And I think Zoya Akhtar actually did them a gigantic favor by casting them as Anglo-Indians and setting this in 1950 or 60 or whatever,
64. Yeah.
60, yeah. And thereby giving them an excuse to have poor diction in Hindi,
Hmm.
because you're not going to be able to cut it in other Hindi movies. Like,
Mm.
what are you going to do for your next film, unless this is a one and done deal, which I suspect it's not? What are you going to do in your second movie? I mean, unless you just intend to keep playing these kind of parts, you're going to at some point have to have an actual dialogue in Hindi. And this is just so disappointing. Like, y'all talk about legacy constantly, like the nepos, they talk about their legacy constantly. Suhana Khan's father is exceptionally eloquent and articulate in his English interviews, in his Hindi interviews. He has an amazing command and grasp over the Urdu language as well. Man is
Mm.
multilingual and brilliant. Agast Ananda, who wants to show off about how he's a Bachchan and a Kapoor on both sides, his great grandfather was Sri Harivansh Rai Bachchan, one of the greatest poets. You have neither a good command over Hindi nor do you have a good command over English. Well done. Your Kushi Kapoor, your mother, Sri Devi, she was a working machine. That woman has such a gigantic list of her filmography, and she worked in Hindi, in Tamil, in Telugu, every language she could get her hands on, and she excelled at every single thing that she did. Y'all can't speak Hindi, but y'all can't speak English either. Like, what is the point? These
Mm.
people go to the best schools. They have the most expensive. Most of them went to Dhirubhai Ambani International School, which is like where only the people with big bucks go. You don't have command over any language. It's so lame. But if you're going to talk about legacy, like, at least learn something from your parents, man. Y'all just like show up and do nothing. It's so
Mm.
lazy. And one of the things I keep raving about to people is, have you noticed how many Australian actors work in Hollywood? So many
Sure.
of them. Margaret Robbie, Naomi Watts, like Russell, like so many people, right? And I never know that they're Australian
Oh,
until I
really?
watch it. Well, I mean, I know that, like, Naomi Watts and all, like, yeah, I know.
Right.
But like so many of them, like, uh, okay, so I recently finished watching The Crown, and Elizabeth Debicki, who plays Princess Diana, I had no idea
Mhm.
she's Australian. I'd actually never heard her name before I started watching The Crown. But when I watched some of her interviews and she had an Australian accent, and I was like, wait, what? This woman is Australian? I really have to hand it to the Aussies. You would never know that they're Australian from the work that they do in Hollywood, because they take on these accents, like American accents and English accents and whatever, so perfectly. But that's because they put in so much work. Like, I was
Mm.
watching Elizabeth Debicki's interview, and she said that for 3 months she worked with a dialect coach to get Princess Diana's accent, because it's that very posh, like, British accent. And every single morning while making like her coffee or tea or whatever, she would mutter to herself, like, on this day 50 years ago, or whatever,
Yeah.
to the point that her sister and people who live with her were like absolutely sick of her. But that's dedication.
Mm.
Where is that? Y'all are Indian, you're born and raised in India, you can speak Hindi well, you can speak English well. Honestly, you should be ashamed. And if that makes me like a judgmental Gen Xer, I truly do not care. But it's disgusting. I see these Aussies work so hard, and I'm like, why can't you? And
Mm.
I think they absolutely deserve to be called out on that. If that makes me
Mm.
a troll, so be it. I don't care. So it
Do you,
was, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you.
No, I was just thinking like, yeah, this was a meh for both of us. And have you seen anything else lately that was good that you would like to talk about?
Yes, I want to talk about Godzilla minus one, which is
Ah, go for it.
amazing. I was so excited. I was so happy. Everyone knows I'm a monster movie lover, and Godzilla minus one is one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. I cried and cried and cried, which, as we all know, means that the movie is good, because I enjoy crying. It is my number one favorite hobby. I was sobbing in the theater, and I was not the only one. There were many people crying.
Aw.
So It was a great film. The special effects were spectacular. I believe it has already been nominated, because it's a Japanese production, and I think it's already being talked about. Like at the Oscars, it would probably be a contender in the special effects category because the special effects were amazing. The story was beautiful. The direction was like amazing. The acting was spectacular. One of the things I love about monster movies is that monster movies are not actually about the monster.
Right.
I mean, yes, you can watch like the Jurassic Parks and the Jaws and the Host, whatever. You can watch those for that monster, and there is a joy in that as well. But really they're about human resilience, and because there's always this angle of like, okay, how are we going to save the day? How are we going to
Mm-hmm.
defeat the monster that wants to destroy us? And it brings out the best as well as the worst impulses. And Godzilla minus one is set in post-World War Japan. The So it's kind of like a prequel to all the Gojiras that have come out,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a very direct link between the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki as having birthed Godzilla, because
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla does not actually exist, whereas like dinosaurs actually exist, orcas exist, Gojira is like completely made up. But the theory is that like it's the radiation from the bomb that created
Mm-hmm.
him. And the movie essentially talks about how World War II, how the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki has basically affected these people for years and years to come. So even though the air raids have stopped, the horror hasn't. So it's a very strong movie with an extremely strong anti-war message. One of the things I appreciated about it was that while they were obviously speaking very clearly about America having dropped the bomb on them, there's scenes where a scientist talks about how the Japanese government did not take good care of its own military. Like there were
Mm.
fighter pilots being sent in planes that were basically nuts and bolts. There were no ejection seats. They talk about the high level corruption. They talk about supply chain issues due to which half of the army perished just due to starvation. So there's a lot of like, there is some giving blame, but there's also taking blame.
Mm.
So I appreciated that. I loved that the women characters, there were not a lot of women characters, but the ones who were there were great. There was the concept of found family, there was concept of honor, of there was PTSD was shown
Mm.
very well, which is a cause very dear to my heart because I come from a military family, and I think that people I think most governments use and throw their military. They use them as
Yeah.
cannon fodder and do not give two shits about what happens. But I had a grandfather who suffered from PTSD his whole life,
Yeah.
even though he was a decorated veteran. So I love that PTSD was such a big thing in this film. Tackling your demons was such a big thing. It is a beautiful movie
Mm.
about what it means to be human, and you will laugh and you will cry and you will applaud. I went on a Tuesday night to see the show because it was the only time that worked for my husband and I. The theater was packed, and it was almost all Americans, and it was a Japanese movie with subtitles, and it was such a cathartic experience because people were laughing and they were clapping and they were crying. They were
Oh,
saying, "Oh," it was a beautiful experience. I highly recommend
wow.
it. It has 98% or 99% on Rotten
Wow.
Tomatoes and 8.5 on IMDb. It is the best film I've seen all year.
Wow.
It takes Barbie down to number 2 for me. So, I
Wow.
loved it, and I think everyone should see it. I think you should see it too. It's very heartwarming. I loved
Mm.
it. What about you? What was the best film you've seen this year?
I was thinking about that, and uh, it's probably Barbie.
Yeah.
Um, but I did recently watch three Hindi films that I hadn't heard much about. Boom, 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 right in a row, newish releases,
Mm,
all of which were pleasant surprises to me. So let me tell you a little bit about those. First, I watched Suki with
mm. Shilpa?
Shilpa Shetty. Uh, I had not even heard of this film, let alone seen any conversation about it. I thought it was pretty cute. Like it's not amazing, but I again, it's a, kind of middle-aged woman, and it's nice to see that in films, and that she is, do you know the setup of the story?
Vaguely, it gave me English Winglish and Tumhari Sulu vibes.
Oh, interesting. Tumari Sulu, I would say maybe a little bit.
Okay.
That's funny that you're easily naming two movies that I was like, oh, we don't see this often. Like, we do actually. um, she was supposed to be quite the firebrand when she was younger. And it's
Mm,
talking about how, or at least what I was understanding was that she is sort of quietly or unspokenly reflecting upon what she's parts of herself that don't come to the fore anymore as a, a grown up with a marriage and a kid and a family and or in a house and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of looking at, will she take an opportunity to reconnect with who she used to be, or will she find a way to bring some of those things forward into her present day life? And there's even, I don't want to be too spoilery, but I will say there's a real moment where it seems like her marriage is going to be, and that you definitely don't see very often.
Yeah.
So I thought that was, it was definitely better. When I read about it, I was just in a mood to kind of watch something, when you don't have a particular agenda of what you want to watch, but I was like, I want to watch something recent, like what's out these days. And I was pleasantly surprised. Then I watched Kufia, which was of course great. Have you seen
Tabu?
it too?
Not yet.
If I had to name my favorite Hindi movie of the year at this point, it's probably going to be that.
Okay.
I really, really liked that. I mean, what's to say a Vishal Bhardwaj film is good? Like okay, nothing
Yeah.
unusual there, but really, really interesting, really juicy, full of complications and interesting political things happening, and then it moves to. I think the film says they're in South Dakota. It's actually filmed in Canada, but they're in the rural United States for reasons that will become clear. And that that's kind of interesting. And the I love when movies use a small town to somehow make things more tense. Like the isolation of a small town is really interesting.
Like
Like that.
Fargo, the TV show is excellent for
Probably,
that.
yeah. I've never watched that because I figured it's
Oh,
too
it's so
violent
good.
for me. But
It is.
if you've ever seen the film Nebraska, that's very much a sort of an emotional drama, but that's got a small town and like the tensions that bubble up in these like remote-ish places. But yeah, so excellent movie.
Doesn't Kufia have this new actress called Vamika Gabbi? I've been hearing a lot about her.
Let me look. I have it pulled up and I
I
don't
haven't
remember who
seen her in
anyone is. Oh,
anything. Is
yes.
she good?
Yes, she is. Yes, she's
Okay.
quite good. I thought everyone was really very good.
Okay.
And I mean, again, no surprise there, but and for all of us who enjoy, Boss Taboo, this is a great one.
Yeah.
And then last night I watched Thank You for Coming,
Oh God.
which,
Okay.
it was being kind of billed as a like sex comedy or whatever. I would not say that's what it is at all. And I that one also kind of hit me more than I thought it would. And I thought someone tweeted to me that they said they appreciated how it went to some dark places. And I'm not sure I would say that it was dark exactly, but again, someone who has just turned 30, trying to take a look at her life and what the film is about kind of on the surface is not really what it's about. And, um, getting to watch, especially a woman make a bunch of mistakes, but then learn from them and do better. And Bhumika's character has a really Bhumi, sorry, she has a lovely relationship with her friend's daughter, kind of her, auntie by friendship. And I have my best friend's daughter is my little nibbling by friendship, and she actually calls me Fronty for friend auntie. We're
Oh.
not actually related. My little friend nibbling. I was thinking about her and some of the scenes. I was actually tearing up because I was like, oh yeah, it's important to have these connections among people that you're not related to. Even if your family is great, it's important to have more than
Yes.
that, I think, as you go through the world. And I thought that was really lovely. I thought there's a lot in there about things that you do when you're younger that other people call mistakes, and how that can burden you for a long time, and what it means to throw those off. And it does have a bit of the like, I'm not going to say it's a full on like sex farce or anything like that, but they do talk about sex a fair amount relatively, but I don't know. And it somehow manages not to be the sort of, I can't think of a good word for this. And the word I'm going to use is gendered, and I don't want it to be, but I'm just going to use it for the sake of moving on. Sort of the shrieking things that are based on Sex in the City that are like, women being maybe self-determined, fun in a self-determined way, but actually they're really just irritating and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like Four More Shots, Please was a show I did not like. And there's some other
I did
films.
not even attempt it because I was like, that will be
Yeah.
an avoider.
So it's not just people with sort of unrecognized alcohol problems running around and being annoying and, causing traffic accidents and things like that. So it was kind of like very duetting in a way. That's only 3 friends as opposed to 4, but it has some nice moments among the friends who have been friends at least since their high school days, maybe longer.
Okay.
I think maybe longer. I really would recommend it.
Okay.
I think it's really sweet. Her, I forget who plays her mom, but I thought she was really good. Um, Anil Kapoor is in it in an extended cameo, which I didn't know, and I very much enjoyed that. I thought that was really funny. Um, there's yeah, it's just I thought it was a really thoughtful film in some ways I wasn't expecting.
Hmm.
So I would encourage people to watch it. And if you have seen it and you would like to talk about it, please feel free to DM me on Twitter or whatever, because I am interested. And I now need to go look up some of the reviews and everything, but I thought it was quite good. Again, nothing
I'll
major
give
music wise in it, but I did like the music fine. Nothing spectacular, but it was fine.
I'll give it a
And
shot because I like Bhumi.
they used Giovanni Johnnyman a lot in the
Hmm.
beginning. And I was like, oh, our Parveen episode, and then we had our cake episode, and
Yes.
like things keep circling back on each other. So it's funny. But yeah, it was good.
Nice. I watched 2 Vicky Kaushal movies because I love
Ah,
Vicky
yes.
Kaushal. So one was okay, like not bad, but like I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But it had like a good social message, I guess. It was okay. It was The Great Indian Family.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, Vicky Kaushal, I don't like him when he's clean shaven. He needs to stop being clean shaven. A stubble is the way to go. The only way he can be clean shaven is if he's wearing a vardi. Like he was hot
Mm,
and razi, but that was due to the vardi. But like
mm,
Vicky Kaushal clean shaven is not a look. That is a good one. The movie was kind of like okay. The movie I really enjoyed and was extremely surprised by how much I enjoyed it, and I made my husband see it and he loved it too. Was Govinda Naam Mera. It has
mm.
Vicky Kaushal, it has Bhumi in it, she's always good,
Yeah.
and it has, Kiara Advani in it, and it was hysterical. I was
Huh.
laughing loud the whole time.
Wow.
It's got a lot of twists in it, so I don't wanna say too much because spoileriness, but it's really funny. It's very witty, it's acerbic, the writing is on point, and of
Mm,
course, the acting is great because you have Vicky Kaushal and Bhumi, like, of course, they're great, and Kiara Advani has, like, a small role, but she's decent too, but
mm,
it's a very, very fun movie. I had a blast watching it, and I don't know why that movie completely, like, came and went and sank without a trace, just like Great Indian Family did, but Govinda Namira was very good. I want to complete my Vicky hat trick by watching, Zara Hatke Zara Bachke. I have been avoiding it because it has Sara Ali Khan, whom I can't stand, but I'll attempt it because I like Vicky. So I am becoming like a Vicky
Okay.
complete. He's just
Mm,
amazing. So yeah, I would recommend Govinda Namera to
okay.
everybody. Just give it a shot, you'll enjoy it. Bhumi is hysterical in it. Like she's basically this shrewish, very, very lazy wife, and she's very vain. Like she's obsessed with her looks, and she's
Mm,
constantly like bullying her husband. She's hysterical. Like I loved her in it. Every time she came on stream, I was just laughing. So I've never like seen a dynamic like her and Vicky in a
mm.
film. It was very nice.
Nice.
So yeah, those were the things I saw. I will give Kufia. I wanted to watch Kufia. The only reason I didn't is because I was a little tired of all the spy stuff. Because there's
That's fair.
Pathan and everything.
Mhm.
So I will watch it eventually. I'm a little bit over
This
spy things
this
right
feels
now.
like it has a lot more actual sort of political content in it. So
Okay.
it's a different feel than
Then like a
like
Pathan kind of,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you're like these are people who are actually concerned with like the ideas and the information rather than the beating people up. There is some
Mm.
of that, but it's much more about the intelligence of the intelligence agency, I would say,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
than the action set piece aspect. The one thing I want to say about Kufia, I put this on Twitter while I was watching. Like I said, I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be in South Dakota. Now, I don't
Mm.
expect everyone in the world to know a whole lot about South Dakota. I don't really know that much about it either. I've never been there. Pretty sure they don't have a subway. And
Oh,
I
you
don't
mean the
mean the
train?
restaurant, I mean the train.
I was thinking of the sandwiches. I was like, "They don't have
No,
Subway
they get on
sandwiches?"
a subway, and I was like, nope.
In South Dakota. Okay.
Definitely not. And then and it was this funny moment that really took me out of the film. And I know, that's a thing that a small proportion of the audience is going to catch. And, I don't know why I let that derail me so much, but it really did. And it took me, like, I had to pause and
Derail
laugh
me
and like,
because it
and
was a
then
sub.
kind of re-engage. And I was like, all right, all right, all right, come on, you can do it. Like, um, yeah, that was really funny.
That's hilarious. So this happens to my mom, because my mom is like a born and bred Mumbaiker, and so one of the things that Mumbai people know is that technically only the city can only have cars and taxis. You can't have rickshaws, and so
Oh,
there's like,
right.
yeah, so once you get
Yeah.
past
Yeah.
Mahim and
Yeah.
once you get into like the suburbs, that's when you have rickshaws. So
Hmm.
sometimes they'll show like a movie and it's like set in Mumbai or whatever, and they'll say that it's like, they'll say it's town, but they'll actually show rickshaw, and I'll be like, no, no. No, no, no rickshaws in town. Not allowed. Not allowed to have that. And I get so hung up on it
That's
because I was like,
funny.
well, but you can't. And it takes me like a few minutes to recover and move past. I'm like, it's a movie. Calm down.
And even I know that, and yet I've never thought to notice it in a film. So yeah,
Yeah.
now it's gonna bug me too.
Yeah, exactly. Have you been watching any TV shows?
Not not as such, really, no, nothing
Mm. I've
that
been
can't be
binging
right,
on
but
6 Feet Under because I
ah,
never watched 6 Feet Under when it actually
mhm,
came out, which was 20 years ago because it was on HBO and I didn't have HBO.
right.
But it recently came on Netflix. And so
Ah,
I was on the subreddit for 6 Feet Under where they were saying that our beloved 20-year-old show is now suddenly going to get a huge
nice.
influx of new fans
Yeah,
because of
yeah.
Netflix. Because this is the first time it's been like on streaming, and
Interesting.
I'm obsessed, and I'm already on season 3. Like every opportunity, like during my lunch break at work, I've been like I'm like trying to watch, like, or at least go to the subreddit to see what people are saying. It's so great, and Michael
Nice.
C. Hall,
Yeah.
oh, he's so, because I've never watched Dexter. I can't with
Mhm.
the blood and the, so but he's so good and he sings so well and he's so beautiful. Every time they have like a David close up, I'm like, "Ah, you are so beautiful," and it's such a great show. It's about death, but it's not morbid or morose. It's just very like tongue in cheek and happy, and it kind of makes me feel better about dying because like we're all dying. But
That's
yeah,
true.
it's like optimistic in a weird kind of way. Frances Conroy is so great. Lauren Ambrose is great. And it's a very
Rachel Griffiths. I
yeah.
love
Oh,
Rachel Griffiths. Mm,
another Australian who
yep.
sounds perfectly American. I tell you, these Aussies, they're like amazing. But yeah, she's so good in it. Her character, Brenda, it's like I feel all these things for her. And then there's Jeremy Sisto.
Yeah.
He plays weirdos so well, but also he's so hot. But like my heart belongs to David, my heart belongs to Michael C. Hall. Every time he comes on screen, I'm just like smiling and I'm like, I love you, David. But yes, I would heartily recommend 6 Feet
Mm,
Under. And despite being a show set in like a mortuary, like a family funeral home business, it's not gross. It doesn't
no.
have like blood and needles and things like that, really. So if people who are queasy about that stuff can still watch it.
Mm.
So if anyone is watching 6 Feet Under, please tell me because I am desperately wanting to have conversations about it. What is next on your watch list? Do you have anything that you're hoping to watch, movie, show?
My watch list is a giant mess. There's
Yes.
just stuff everywhere. And so for those who don't know, I had some surgery earlier this year and I had to organize my watch list by which platform it was on so that I could be like, okay, I've turned on Netflix, which thing should I watch?
Nice.
And I haven't gone back to it in a while. But I've got, then I have my Indian movie to watch list, which is also large. And um I can't even remember what's I want to watch Duck Duck. Have you seen the trailer for
Oh
that?
no, I have. Dia Mirza, Ratna
Yeah.
Pathak Shah.
Yeah.
I've seen the
That looks
the the
cute.
interviews they did
Yeah.
about it. I haven't seen it.
That was
Okay.
another one that was not on my radar at all. And then finally YouTube was like, "Do you want to see the trailer for this?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I do." I am very bad at staying up to date with what's coming out in Hindi movies. And I've never figured out the best way to stay informed. So I need to work on that. Um, and then
I
yeah.
just follow all those like Bollywood platforms on Instagram, and then they just keep posting
Mm,
stuff. Or like if you follow like Film Companion or Anupama Chopra,
I do.
whatever.
And like I somehow still never
Oh.
notice things. Like I see the reviews of stuff that has come out, but
Hmm.
I never seem to clock what's going to come out.
Because often
Um,
I won't see what's actually coming out, but I've seen the interviews about it. So, for instance, I've
nice,
already seen the interviews about
nice.
Dak Dak, and Dia Mirza was being very annoying, and she kept interrupting everyone. And I
Oh
was like,
dear.
don't you dare interrupt Ratna Pathak Shah, okay? Like, do not do that." But she was very irritating in those.
That seems
Um,
hazardous to your health. Why would you do
it
that?
actually does. I would not interrupt either Ratna or Nasiruddin
No,
Shah. Like, both of those people, you just like,
I will wait.
yes, I will wait my turn. um, but yeah, I see a lot of those. And then, oh my God, my feed has been full of like animal, which I refuse to see. And Vanka just being awful and toxic and terrible. And
Mm,
I saw a thing about Ranbir Kapoor, which I've never been like a Ranbir Kapoor fan as like for the person he is, although I think he's an exceptional actor and like he's so good at acting. But I saw a thing about an interview that he did where he said that because he's now a father, he wants to have like a healthy lifestyle because of his daughter. So he said he's
mm.
quit smoking and drinking. Presumably, he's quit drugs or something. I don't know. He didn't mention that, but he did. He has quit smoking and drinking. He's quit like meat. Like he's turned. Like he's
Wow.
basically trying to be very healthy. And I was like, okay, but like you're doing these horrible toxic films. Isn't that bad for your like your emotional and psychological health? But I guess we don't care about that. We only care about what we're ingesting. Okay.
Maybe he signed, I mean,
Um
maybe he signed it before he knew he was going to be a dad.
maybe
Maybe he'll stop now, but
maybe he just cares about the money. I don't know. But yeah, the animal stuff has been like really awful. And like I don't have threads or anything, and I certainly haven't had Twitter in a long time. But it's so funny where right now a lot of the discourse on Twitter and threads is about the the pro animal people who are supposedly there's a new phrase that they've been using new to me where they say anti woke people. So I suppose I would be an anti woke person. So they're going after the anti woke people, and then the woke people, which I don't think of myself as a woke people, but like whatever, they're going after the animal watchers. So there's that happening. And then there's a lot of people who are upset that like Taylor Swift is like Time Magazine's person of the year. And I don't care
right,
about that one way or the other.
right.
Like, I'm not a Swiftie. I don't listen to her music. I'm basically neutral and
Yeah,
indifferent towards. I
same.
do like the fact that she's been telling people to vote or like to
Yeah,
register to vote. I
yeah,
appreciate that. But other
yeah,
than that, I don't care. But the chatter about that is so misogynist, Beth. It's like all these
yeah.
men who are getting butthurt about the fact that Elon Musk, why is anyone even paying attention to that fool? But he said a thing about how childless aging women posing with a cat on top of time is like bad. And I'm like, I am a childless aging woman with two cats and a dog, and like my life is awesome. I'm sorry your life sucks, Elon, but like so weird. Like, why is that so triggering? Like, get a life. But yeah, that's really weird too. Okay,
Mm,
I think we said whatever we wanted to say regarding the Archies.
mhm.
This puts us in the troll category, by the way, since everyone is labeling everyone these days because the actor has been very defensive
I mean,
about
words
the
have
criticisms.
meanings and word meanings can change, but like there's nothing we're doing that qualifies as trolling actually. So whatever.
Well, if you listen to the Bollywood people telling them that their movie is not good is trolling,
Sure.
apparently.
Whatever. I don't care.
That's because we're childless aging women, Beth.
Oh, that's true. That's true. We are. How dare
And so
we?
we're supposed yeah, no, and we should be miserable,
Right.
but we're not.
Right.
Okay, well, thank you for watching this episode of Filmy Ladies. We hope you had fun. Tell us what you think in the comments. And also, if you have any suggestions about episodes we should do in the future, Beth has something to say.
And be extra sure you listen next week for our Christmas episode, which has a special guest and an amazing topic. Be sure you subscribe so you don't miss it.
Yes, we will be celebrating two birthdays, baby Jesus' birthday and also my birthday. So we can all have virtual cake and watch the episode and also have champagne.
Absolutely.
Champagne is
Mm,
mandatory.
mm.
So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We are on YouTube and Spotify and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. We are everywhere because we love doing this podcast and we hope you enjoy listening. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.